book. Hello everybody. Right. Time to give you a sneak peek of my other work that I'm working on. The book ADHD ME, Pimp To Programmer. This is the first chapter. This is some of what I've done so far. Chapter 1. Fucking eat them, or I'll beat you when we get out of the store. My mother spat at me furiously in a tone that came to dominate her whole life. As I stood crying my eyes out, tears streaming down my face and into the packet of crisps she had snatched off the supermarket shelf and thrust into my tiny 6-year-old hands, I wept sobbing as we walked around the Asda Walmart supermarket over in Wednesbury. Why was I crying, you may be wondering? Well, I had asked for some crisps, potato chips, and amazingly my mum had just stolen a bag because I was begging for crisps as any 6-year-old child would. I'll ask again, why was I crying? I had the crisps and was bound to escape the aforementioned beating just so long as I'd stop crying. Well, the problem was this: she had stolen them without paying for them, and having any intention of doing so. This caused me as a 6-year-old supposedly learning the difference between right and wrong, a massive inner conflict. If I ate them, I was a thief, and if I didn't, I was the victim of a declared physical and emotional abuse. I went on to suffer all my life anyway. I walked around sobbing into the packet, making them all sloppy and gooey. As deep inside me I knew that what she was forcing me to do was in fact illegal. I didn't have a concept of law, but knew even then that it was wrong to take things without paying. Anyway, we reached the checkout counter and I hoped she would pay for the crisps, but she never did, and I dare not say a thing. So that was the day right and wrong became blurred to me. I got in the car feeling that I had done what I was told, and wallop, she turns around and smacks me really hard. I've told you about embarrassing me. Wallop, wallop, wallop. When I give you something, you fucking eat it, you little bastard. Do you understand? She said, giving me a final wallop. Eventually my stepfather, who I have and will always refer to as my dad throughout this book, jumped in with his thick-set Jamaican patois accent. Stop it, Pauline. The boy is right. How can you hit him after he did what you told him? Jimmy said. Because the little bastard wouldn't stop crying and embarrassed us, she replied venomously. So I lay down on the rear seat waiting to get home, waiting until I could get away from her and her abuse by locking myself in my bedroom. Boy, did I ever think that life was to be the biggest roller coaster for me. Hidden behind a 5-bedroom house in the suburbs was me, a kid with ADHD, diagnosed between 1982 and 1984 with hyperactivity disorder. Back then, we were just singled out as the naughty kids, who were destined for prison with limited intelligence and less social skills than any of our peers. Page 2. This is one of my most prevalent childhood memories, and is so vivid it sticks in my mind. So as not to keep the story from getting boring, it may jump back and forth across time and events. I will, however, aspire to achieve consistency when telling you my story, which is tragic not just for me, but for the lives I have ruined and taken advantage of over the years. Who am I, and what's this all about? Well, me, I'm Keeron Forshaw, a man that went from convicted armed robbing pimp to eventually becoming a self-taught computer scientist, programmer, musician, and much, much more. Let's get on with it. So back in the mid-80s, my dad, who had only met my mum recently, had a stroke of luck and won money on the football coupons, sort of like a cross between lottery and accumulator bets. So they decided to get married and settle down in a new house with the 3 kids that wanted to live there or had to live there, where the other 2 didn't want to or couldn't. Anyway, we moved then into an affluent estate where we were only the second biracial family in the estate and amongst the first 5 ethnic Afro-Caribbeans to live there. I hate to say it, but the Caucasians were quick to put up the for sale signs as they saw more and more ethnic cultures begin to move into Hawthorne Park. You would think it was all peachy from then on, but no, not for me. That house had lifted us from the council estates, but it had also become a place I suffered and witnessed so much emotional and physical abuse that I can't wait to see it gone, so I can close that chapter in my life. I see that house as being the destruction of our whole family, extended as well. The jealousy and envy by the other families still stuck in the council estates in South Wolverhampton has fueled a bitter battle that is always lurking under the surface. At any moment, a family brawl can break out, causing the rift to widen. My life was different from the ghetto kids and far distant from the kids in my new estate. It was hell on earth, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, ever. Suffering with ADHD all my life has been very tough, indeed almost unbearable at times, and having parents who would have made Hitler quake in his boots made everything a million times worse. I often find myself wondering, had I been blessed with better, more nurturing parents, if life would have been better for me, as I was mostly cursed at by my mother and served justice by leather belt from my father. Granted, it was usually warranted when he reprimanded me, but I learned to take it, so I was usually hit more than the usual 6 lashes, just because I refused to let them see me cry. Page 3. Anyway, it all began when my mum was living in the council estates of Parkfields on the main road into Birmingham City, the UK's second city. That's where me and my sister felt our first encounter with fear. I had just started to become aware as a toddler, and my elder half-sister was given the job of looking after me while Mum went off swanning it up at the bingo hall. She went as often as she could afford, or as often as she could coerce men, usually black men, into paying for her, or at least her drinks, preferably whiskey. Well, one night, me and my sister were home, and there was a knock at the door, and it was our cousins. So naively we believed their story of being sent to check we were all right. My sister was only 11 at most. Anyway, foolishly, she broke the golden rule, believing that as blood relatives, they were genuinely concerned for our well-being. We were wrong. As Samantha opened the door, in rushed a crowd of people, mostly, if not all, cousins from my mum's eldest sister's family. They roamed around the house, stealing anything they thought was valuable, then left with a threat for us not to tell anyone. We were so scared we didn't want our mum to come home that night. She did, and boy was there hell to pay. I tried to fight even at age 5, but was useless due to being so small, but my sister didn't know what to do. I don't remember everything that went on after that incident, but I do remember that being the start of the rift that I can remember. My mum was very house proud, too house proud if you ask me. Her belongings come first, before anything, and you dare not touch her red glass collection. Anyway, shortly after that, Mum had a few boyfriends, one I loved dearly who offered to move me to New York when I was a teenager and getting into trouble with the law, and Gordon, who I remember vaguely as being a nice guy. Anyway, eventually she met a man I now call my dad, as he raised me from I was 5, maybe 6 years old. He was a pleasant man with 2 children of his own. I'm not going to say their names. It was a whirlwind romance, as within months they were married, and having won some money, my dad took the offer on his old house the council had offered so they could demolish it, and we were house hunting in the upper class estate of Hawthorne Park, not too far away from where we started in Parkfield. As my mum didn't want to leave her family, we found a house they loved, which I personally hated. I preferred the big white house on the corner with a white picket fence, the lot. But no, I had no say, even though they asked me what I thought. It was irrelevant. It was obvious they were going to buy, so my dad made the move and bought the house cash. The original owner snapped it up and moved to a much better town. So, page 4. So, in we moved. Mum buying and bringing all that she could to make the house look nice, but to me it was always evil. It had something about it that I just couldn't get a grip on. But I knew I hated it. I'd been taken from the council estate and now lived amongst the children of corporate directors and brain surgeons. My brother, my stepbrother, was in his element. He was a cool 80s teenager with jerry curls and all the latest gear, whereas I had practically nothing. I broke things or I got furious with them. I never really had any toys except the ones Dad sent me from America when my mum refused to let me go live in the States. Thinking back, I'm glad I never, as if my life had gone how it did in England, I'd either be dead, doing life in jail, or awaiting the death penalty anyway. Death penalty. Anyway, David was popular and a bit of a rude boy, so everyone respected him and I rolled on his coattails, known as Little Chambers, even though that's not my real second name. It's Samantha. It's Samantha's dad's name, my mum's first married name. No, not my real name. I've got to change that. Right. Anyway, the house became the place I feared the most over time. It destroyed me and my sister Samantha. As far back as I can remember, Samantha, who I'll refer to as Sam or Sammy from now on, had a very weird behavioural trait. She rocks back and forth, increasing in speed the more stress she is under. She rocks like those children in the Romanian orphanages you see on TV, and she still does. I believe it's due to trauma caused by my mum and her seriously intimidating and often violent ways. Back to the truth. So we got a new house and a room each. However, this house was never intended to be a home. Not in the traditional sense. It was more of a show home for Mum to gloat about and show off. At the time, my brother was being looked after with all the Farrah press trousers, pants, money could buy, and enough jerry curl juice to keep his hair looking wet. Whereas me, I was left with an untidy afro that my dad sheared off, or my brother occasionally jerry curled for me. My mum used to joke about how she wouldn't let me cut my hair so she could use it as a handle to get a grip on me, as I got used to slipping away from her grip when they decided it was time to medicate me with Phenergan. Usually forcibly overdosing me, but I'll get to that later. So as we settled, I left the school I was in for 1 week and moved into Goldthorne Park Primary. I didn't know anyone and it had a mixture of kids. I made friends with my first ever friend, Darren Smith, by convincing him to come to my house to play because I had Airwolf in my garage. And coming from a council estate like I would have done at that age, he believed me, as who knows what these huge houses contain. Anyway, I went on to make a lifelong friend, even though we haven't spoken for years due to the usual reasons friends fall out. And no, not women, but money. That's a story for later. Though, as my friend Darren became one of my closest friends, we played soldiers in the nearby woods, and we used to rob the old TV meter with the nail file, taking almost all the coins and leaving his mum explaining to a very suspicious TV meter collection man that she really wasn't fiddling the meter and had no idea why the meter was tens of pounds short. Almost every week, Darren, or Daz as he's known to us, would share his dubiously earned money with me so we could play the latest arcade machines at the Cashcade or in the local chip shop or video rental shops that were dotted around the notorious estate of Blakenham. You know the one where Horrick Campbell eventually lost his mind and jumped the local school fence, attacking the small children and a teacher with a machete in a mad frenzy. I once shared an elevator with him and was on high alert as he stood behind me giggling to himself in a very unnerving way. Anyway, so we robbed the TV meter again, and Daz, as he always did, shared it equally, as he knew I didn't get pocket money like the other kids. I used to have to beg for sweets, money from kids from all the rival schools in our area, as they had a mixture of pupils. Most of the kids from my new estate, Goldthorne Park, went to schools further away, more upmarket schools where success was almost assured, so long as you didn't fall foul of being a naughty kid. So this was it, a pocket full of coins and the arcade every Saturday morning, me and Daz tagging along into the town with Dazzy's brother Andy, or my brother, as he went to Cascade charming all the ladies with his Jerry curl juice, wet look hair and tidy but still boyish bum fluff moustache that made him so popular with all the girls. To me, my brother David was a god. He was everything I wanted to be. I even used to sit by his door listening to the 80s disco and groove and breakdance music. Electric Boogaloo made me dream of becoming a musician when I could afford my own stuff. I used to admire the equipment of the groups I saw on television and say to myself, one day I'm going to have a recording studio too. It was my first childhood dream I ever aspired to achieve, but the odds were stacked against me due to me being so mentally traumatised and unsupported due to a then misunderstood mental illness, which will haunt me for the rest of my life, with no hope of respite except the chance that it may mellow out as I get older. Home life was a nightmare. I hated being at home. I used to prefer going over the farmers' fields or in the arcades, watching the older, more affluent kids playing the latest arcade games like Yar Kung Fu and Ghosts and Goblins, or R-Type and Rolling Thunder, or Street Fighter and POW, Prisoners of War, or the absolute classic Rastan. But for me, my absolute favourite was Ninja Gaiden, the one where the arcade machine screen was 3 screens long and reflected back off a mirror, giving it a seriously cool look and amazing appeal. These games span years of my young life and are no way reflective of any specific time period. They are merely named for reference and as props for blessing my life with these amazing pleasures. Ah yes, home life. What can I say? At first everything went okay. We were given our rooms and orders which were not to enter each other's rooms, and that we could only use the bathroom, the kitchen and the downstairs toilet. We occasionally were allowed to sit with Dad in the lounge, the others had a bit more free rein than I did. I was more like a dog on a leash, a fine, not quite afro hair leash that, as I mentioned, was used to control me up until I became ultra violent. But I'll tell you why further on in my tale, ADHD and me. Some things will always remain a family secret while in living memory, as it's not my issue or place to speak. But all I'll say is I know the truth, and it wasn't how it was made out to be. No victim. Well, we've all been there. We've all been living at the house, and my extended family came round regularly. One would always try to show off and put herself on a pedestal. So frequently the old family rift that still occasionally surfaces and causes bar brawls between us all. Even the baby kids would arise, with the family telling my mum that she's up her own arse, and my mum telling everybody to fuck off out of her house and that they'll never have a house like this, blah blah bullshit. That's all that happened. We'd all get on fine, then he said, she said would crop up, and boom, big family row again. Everyone fighting, so eventually the family starts to break up through hatred, envy, jealousy, and my mum's lust for power and demand to be seen as having achieved the most in life. As my mum says about me, I say about her. Always, as she always said to me, I love you but I hate you. And I've told her directly that I feel the same, but my reasons are different. Hers is because she wanted me to be like her, and still tells people I am when I am not. Where am I? See, my mother is a gold digger. She will take a starving man's last crumb, even though she has a full loaf of bread. Whereas I will give you my last loaf of bread, just to see you have more than a crumb. She wanted me to be like a cray twin. She wanted me to be an animal. And in all honesty, as I'll explain later, she nearly succeeded, had it not been for some very caring and inspiring people, who without meeting them, this book would have never been possible, as my mentality would still be lie, cheat and steal. Fuck you and everything you stand for which would most likely have ended my life, or seen me incarcerated beyond any reasonable doubt, with little to no hope of a turnaround in character. Spiritually or personally, personal, mental, with little to no hope of a turnaround in character, spirituality or personal mental self-development. See, I was hated by all my peers. My brother was cool, but I was the naughty little bastard that wouldn't sit still or do as I was told. My cousins made fun of me being a rich kid because they assumed my brother had all the latest gear, so I must have too. But no, I suffered the hand-me-downs or the bed clothes and toys from other kids' parents that my mum would manipulate into feeling sorry for me. Big respect to Nicky Mason and his mum. Thanks for the little red tractor and Star Wars figures. They went well with my frog soap dish as the Manelian Falcon. Oh, and by the way, I didn't and would never have robbed from your granddad. He fed me when I was homeless and starving. I made the two youth what did bring back the watch. I didn't have any part in it except stopping them selling the watch to a hawk on the drugs front line that would have not given a shit about who it belonged to. Anyway, let's get back to the story. So yes, Mum would control me like a robot. When we visited family, I was made to sit at the side of the sofa while all the kids were playing, and when my aunties and uncles did say, "Nah man, let the boy play," it would usually end in me being ganged up on or beaten up by my family, because while I may not have been very smart because of my conditioning into subservience and obedience by my mother, I was always a brave little bastard, sometimes stupidly brave, to the point of ridiculousness. I remember times being at my cousin's and getting jumped because I argued to go on their Sega Master System after sitting and being passed over. Just one more go, they kept saying over and over again until I demanded my go, and then they beat me up, and my mum beat me up when I got home, and I was back to sitting at her side like a pet. For God only knows how long. Anytime we went anywhere, my closest auntie and cousins only realised the abuse I suffered a few years ago when I was in my mid-30s, and said they were so sorry they didn't know, and if they had have known it would never have been allowed. Basically, as time went by, the new house became more and more of a show home and a prison. My parents fitted locks to every door, fitted UPVC doors at every entrance point, inside and outside the house, and locked every door. I wasn't even allowed a key, so I had to ask for everything. And our house, boy, not only was it like a prison, it was locked up like one too. We had 1 pint of orange squash a day, 1 evening meal and breakfast before school, and I was on free school meals as my parents were on benefits, so again I got made fun of. The rich kids who paid or had sandwiches didn't want to sit with me because I had free meals, and only the poor kids had free meals, and the poor kids didn't want to sit with me because only the rich kids live in Goldthorne. Only my good friend Daz would sit with me, and rarely did I get to enjoy my meals, as either somebody was threatening to beat me up, you know the type, bigger than everyone with an inferiority complex, or the teachers were ordering me around and singling me out as being disruptive. One as being the disruptive one, as they only ever saw me and the tirade of abusive language I was usually throwing back at the bully. I've had so many people bully me or try to over the years, and even recently as this Christmas I've had a known gunman threaten me and steal from me when all I tried to do was help him. While he has suffered from an addiction to drugs, he did this in my own house, but I didn't react and wouldn't unless I was attacked. As when you hear what happens as I go through life and the risk I would face, if I did, you will understand. End of chapter 1. That's a little taste of ADHD and Me. That's the first chapter of ADHD and Me, Pimp To Programmer. So hope you enjoy. There's plenty more to come. See you later. Alright everybody, back with chapter 2 of ADHD and Me. I'm going to read you the first few chapters and then I'm going to put it out there on sale. Little £1, £2, whatever, 60p, whatever. Alright, chapter 2. So, it's primary / junior / senior school days now. and in moves more black families with children to go through. The Wrights, the Powells, who were there long before us, and the Taylors, and the Porters, who also might have been there before us. I'm not actually quite sure, but they were all lovely, all of them are now. But boy, was that a major problem for me in its day. The Wrights were my main problem. We were arch enemies, two brothers, one a year older and one the same age. Now thinking back, it's these two that gave me my greatest skill, that of being naturally ambidextrous, and the Taylors too for that matter. Here's what helped me to become the person I am today. Well, as I've already said, and will probably say again over the course of this book, I suffered a lot of mental and physical abuse from my parents and systemic bullying from my white half-sister and biracial stepbrother. Let's just call them my brother and sister. I do anyway. My brother was friends with the sons and daughters of the Powells, the Powell family, and they all hung out together. And one day I was asked if I would like to go to church, Sunday school, for something to do. So knowing that Sunday Dad sleeps on the sofa all day, I'm at risk of Mum's abuse. Should the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie not satisfy her, there was always me she could swear at and call all the worthless shit under the sun. So I jumped at the chance. I thought being around 9, maybe a bit older, maybe a bit younger, I can't be exact, as life just became one big eternally awful day from we moved into that cursed house. Anyway, I start going to Sunday school and start to learn about the Lord Jesus Christ, and I start to learn about the Little Pilgrim's Progress, which is still my favourite childhood book. Also, I found my voice and turned out to be a very capable vocalist. Even at a young age, I was leading and picking the school choir from first year primary. However, I've joined Sunday school and I want to worship. I need Jesus to save me, mostly from the abuse I was getting at home and the disregard and reprimands from the teachers for being the naughty kid that never finishes his work, disrupts the class, talks incessantly, and is a general nuisance. Anyway, I go to church looking for Jesus and encounter my first ever confrontation with racism, and boy, this was a shocker. It was a Pentecostal all-black church. Our service was after the regular Church of England service held at 9 in the morning. What you may be thinking is not the case. The racism, while looking back, was obviously present amongst the groups, was not what I encountered. It was from the eldest Wright brother, John. I asked a question in Sunday school, which too was an all-black affair. Me being the only biracial child in the whole church, with no one to defend me. Back came an answer, and it was from John. Why don't you shut your mouth? Nobody wants to hear you, you half-breed, spat John to a room full of laughter, at which point I didn't know how to respond. So I told him in church, something along the lines of, go fuck your mum. I spat in retort, at which point the Sunday school teacher jumped in, but made it clear that I was in the wrong, not John. I spent the whole of Sunday school with these two brothers making fists at me and winking as if something was going to happen as soon as the adults were out of sight. I escaped that time by being dropped home after Sunday school by the church bus, but they made it known I was going to get it. However, the next day came, it's early morning, I'm up and I've been forced to eat my breakfast cereal. Didn't have a choice, you will eat them or else, because you're not throwing anything away in my mum's house. No, not a chance of that. Anyway, I leave the house and start to walk down the street towards school and the huge conker trees that stood guarding the estate like warriors ready for battle. And not unknowingly to me, the Wright brothers come out of the cul-de-sac that extends from the middle of my street, and I realise that they live on the same estate in a house right behind mine. Half-breed, shouts one of them. What did you say about my mum? He continues. Me being the brave. Remember, I said stupidly. Brave bastard. Well, here's what I did in response to being called half-breed. I told you to go fuck her, black fanny. I shouts back at her.
at this point. Any other kid would have ran off, but me, no, I wasn't going to be intimidated. So they ran up to me and immediately started to hit me, pounding their fists into my face and head from all angles. I'm trying to fight back, but being so young and only mildly experienced at fighting more than one at a time, I tried to hold my own. But eventually the inevitable happens and I go to the ground. After a rain of fists comes a rain of feet. I'm being pummeled because of my skin colour for the first time. And yes, I've heard my mum's brothers say black bastard this and black bastard that, but never had I encountered what at that time I adopted as a pair of black bastards. All they were doing was hurling abuse about my white mum and my confused dad not being a real black man because he likes white women and mongrel kids. And these were supposedly people of God. From what I was seeing, the people from the council estates were far better people. Anyway, this became a running battle for the following 8 years or so. Years fighting these two brothers nearly every day to get always together, never once them fighting one-on-one, always two-on-one. And one time, my Indian friend who used to call me Jungle Bunny, obviously a racist term, saw me get the better of John, the antagonist, and ran to fetch Dean, his brother, and some metal-loaded pool sticks, and all three of them jumped me. I tried to fight, but 6 hands and feet and 2 pool sticks are a lot to deal with. Eventually, my dad had enough of me coming home every day with my clothes ripped off my back and telling him I've been fighting the two of them again. He decides this time it's enough. So he marches me round to the house where they live and bangs on the door. Bear in mind, he has a machete in a plastic bag for the dad if he wants to have a pop too. And he says it's plain and straight. Your boys keep beating up my son. Bring them out here now and my son will go with them both, one after the other, instead of them keep jumping on him 2-on-1. The dad looks worried. He can see the machete handle and hears my dad's tone. He is not joking. And I'm like, yeah, bring them out. I'll go 1-on-1. But they hide behind their dad saying, it's not us, Dad. It's him. He's causing it. Pretending to be innocent little church boys. The dad calls it. And they won't come out. But does that stop the war? No, it makes it worse. Like I said, it went on for 8 years. And they, along with the Taylor kids who I used to fight with too occasionally, brother and sister kicking my ass, have made me become ambidextrous. I love them all and always will, and the rights for that matter, because blessed is the power of Jesus, and I wouldn't be the man I am had I not suffered the little pilgrim's fate. However, this is not the end. This is just a running theme, a problem I had to deal with over and over as the kids didn't like me. They were all scared of my brother, but used to bully me and creep to my brother saying I was lying because my mum made out I was a lying piece of shit. Everybody believed it. They still do locally. I am a pariah, but in reality I am a paradox. And I've come to realise that's what people hate about me. They will never be me, so they try to belittle me and destroy my self-belief. And at times it's almost work. Moving back through time, we're settled in Goldthorne and I start going to the local swimming baths as I have managed to charm the lifeguards and the cashier, as all the other kids have got money to swim, but I haven't. Anyway, they let me in a few times, but eventually they have to stop as it's not supposed to be allowed. So I sneak into the locker room and for some reason I start checking the open lockers for the 5 pence that is used to secure the locker. And to my amazement, I find some with money still in them. So I start gathering them up. And me being naive, decides to tell my friends what the situation is. And for a few weeks, I keep going on the weekends and checking and finding money. However, a bully, come friend, got wind of it. And me being naive, looked up to him. So one day he tells me he wants all the money I find, or his 2 brothers younger than me will beat me up. And if I fight back, he will jump in as well. So under duress, I start to search for money. I'm no older than between 6 and 9 years old. Anyway, at first, it's all good. I keep finding bits of money, but eventually the well runs dry. So I get my very first jump in. These were before Dean and John Wright, and for a time during it. It all changed when I became ultra violent. Moving on, one of the weekends I find a flathead screwdriver in the roadside guttering and pick it up. I have no intentions of any kind but begin, as I usually did on a Saturday, to make my way down to the local swimming baths. Again, the bully is there with his brothers, waiting for me. So while they are all swimming, I decide to place the screwdriver head in the gap between a locker door and the door jamb and start to apply pressure. I didn't actually have any intention. I was just doing it because I was bored and wasn't allowed to swim because I couldn't pay. Pop! The locker door flies open and I'm staring at this man's trouser pants and wallet. I freeze. What do I do? So I take the 5 pence and lock back the locker. I try it again and sure enough, pop! It opens again. I'm not a thief, or at least I wasn't. But remember the crisps in the supermarket? Is it wrong? Is it right? So I took the 5 pence, broke into a few more and left them looking like they were not shut properly in the first place. Again, naively, I showed the bully what I had learned, believing him to be my friend. I still fall for it now. I got too much of a godly heart. No matter my cruelty and darkness in further chapters of this book, no matter my cruelty and darkness in further chapters of this book, and he begins using me to do things he wouldn't. He began using his brothers to beat me up, so I started stealing people's belongings and giving him the wallets and purses from both the men's and women's locker rooms. Because I was so young, I wasn't a threat to the women. They just saw me as a lost little boy looking for his mummy. This also went on for years. It wasn't always abusive, but it was always there waiting to pounce. If it wasn't mum, it was the teachers. If it wasn't the teachers, it was the bullies. If it wasn't the bullies, it was the racists. If it wasn't them, it was being dragged by my hair to the floor by my parents, restrained and forcibly drugged. These are all the memories I have of what most would call a happy childhood. The only thing I can truly say I'm grateful for is I was never raped. Life goes on. I'm struggling to keep up at school. I'm struggling to learn how to write properly. I still can't join up writing and use upper and lower case at random in my words and sentences. However, a few school moments stick out for me. One of the most impressive predictions I ever saw come true about my life was my junior school teacher, Miss Pyatt. She told me before I left junior school I'd be in prison by the time I was 21. Boy, was she right. I was in prison on my 21st birthday, wondering how the heck she knew. How the heck she could have predicted that. Now I understand ADHD better than they ever did in the 80s. A dog could have predicted that, especially as I was being ignored when calling out for help about the abuse at home. I was told once by my youth justice worker, Takor, I see it, Keeron. I see all the locks on the door. They ain't fucking fooling me. But they have a nice big house in a posh area. No one will believe you. You're 15 now. You've just got to put up with it one more year and you can leave forever. Back to school and the prediction of my future imprisonment. I'm in class and playing up as usual. I'm not interested in being forced to comply. Why should I? It's boring. So I'm chatting away. Anyway, up comes this large lady with brown spiky hair and spectacles, looking back, an obvious lesbian. Not that that's of any importance, I'm just trying to give you a mental picture. What do you think you're playing at? Get some work done, she screams at me, making me feel as though I'm being singled out. Fuck you, I reply, at which she instantly grabs me by the shirt collar and hoists me out my chair and off the floor, screaming at me, you'll be in prison by the time you're 21, you will. I'm between 6 and 11. How dare this woman make such an assessment about me and my future when she doesn't even care what's going on in my home life? So knowing she has a trip skiing in the Alps the following week, and she's been gloating about how much she's looking forward to it, I start kicking her shins as hard as fast as I can with pointy hard school shoes on. She dragged me to the office of the headmaster, who kicked me out of the school for numerous days on a suspension, and when I returned, felt utterly vindicated when she told me quietly she hated me because I had bruised all her shins up so she couldn't ski for the whole holiday. Ha! That's what you get for judging me, is all I've got to say. Oh, and you were right, I was in prison on my 21st birthday, thinking of you and your skiing holiday. Slowly time passes and I move into senior school. And again, all my problems follow me. But now I'm picking up more and more bullies. I fought them all, win, lose or draw. Sometimes, where am I? Sometimes I'd even ambush them when they were playing Romeo with their girlfriends, letting their girlfriends know they pick on the smaller kids. They hated it when I did that. I even knew I'd lose, but I did it out of principle. Their girlfriends always felt sorry for me and left them shortly after for beating up a kid. But they saw the bully come out in the fight. I'll admit I picked fights too, but mine was mostly because I couldn't handle my home and school life. My friends would always run away from me, and I was then, and still am now, pretty much a loner. I have an army of people, but mixed with none. I love them all, but won't mix, as I realise that ADHD has made me a social misfit and has caused me to become too much of a bore. See, I don't have the fun memories that others do. I never felt success or love or support. My home life was an absolute front. If we had dared to tell an official and not been taken away into protective custody, me and my sister could have ended up dead. Mum would have killed us. I remember the first time I realised that Mum was about to actually kill me. Not metaphorically, but actually kill me. I was around 9, maybe 10, possibly even younger. It was when Mike Tyson had just become the world heavyweight champion of the... When Mike Tyson had just become the heavyweight champion of the world. Well, I'd asked for a haircut, as I was sick of being grabbed by the hair, and I wanted to celebrate Tyson's win. He was a role model to me at that age. It wasn't Ali for us, it was Tyson. Anyway, my mum refused to give me the money to get it cut. She had her bingo money, of course. Anyway, again, Daz, my friend, breaks into his mum's TV meter, and we both go to Raj hairstylists on Dudley Road in Blakeney and have matching Tyson V haircuts. Daz is white, by the way. Anyway, we both go home, and I'm sat in the living room. Mum and Dad have left the key out. So I'm watching telly, sat on the pristine leather Chesterfield sofas that still look exactly the same. And in walks my mum and dad. First, my mum says, "What the fucking hell have you done to your fucking hair?" with a grimace so cold it would scare a corpse. She turns, walks out of the living room and goes into the kitchen. I hear a drawer open and in walks my mother with a 9-inch carving knife. She starts walking straight up to me. "What the fuck you do, Pauline?" my dad shouts in his thick Jamaican accent. He had a look in his eye that glared at her as if she dares to stab me, he would murder her right there and then. I'm screaming, "Mum, don't," as she lunges across the floor screaming at me. "What the fuck have you done to your fucking hair?" She pauses after my dad had shouted, then looked me straight in the eye. She drives the knife so deep into her own wrist it opens up like a Christmas turkey. There is blood flying everywhere. Everybody starts panicking and we all start flapping around like headless chickens, not knowing what to do. Eventually she walks into the kitchen and gets a damp cloth and wraps it round her wrist. So our dad gets the car out of the garage and we make our way to the accident and emergency department of the local hospital. We spend the whole night in accident and emergency, with me being controlled in the same way an uncaring dog owner controls their dog. Eventually they stitch her up and she swears me to secrecy. I'm not allowed to tell anyone she was intending on killing me and that she fell over and cut it on glass. That was the first time I remember her trying to kill me. She also told me once a story of when I was a toddler. She told me that I smacked her in the face, and out of natural reaction she hit me so hard I went flying across the room, and how her youngest brother beat the shit out of her for doing it. My mother is evil, she's wicked, and thank God she met my dad, because had he been an abusive man, I would have killed them both a long time ago. All I can say is thank you, Jesus, for my dad. He is the being for my dad. He is such a good man. Now I'm older, I realise that I get my morals from him. As for my mother, she is my rage, and God help anyone who pushes me into a corner. It's not good to be mentally and emotionally programmed to fall back on your own natural fight or flight mechanism. Not when you are essentially what in olden days would have been known as a lycanthrope, or more accurately, have a disorder that I personally call Jekyll and Hyde syndrome, pre-programmed to resort to extreme violence in defence of the self. Blessed be the power of the Lord. End of chapter 2. Hope you enjoyed.
Book. Hello everybody. Right. Time to give you a sneak peek of my other work that I'm working on. The book, ADHD ME, Pimp To Programmer. This is the first chapter. This is some of what I've done so far. Chapter 1. Fucking eat them, or I'll beat you when we get out of the store. My mother spat at me furiously in a tone that came to dominate her whole life. As I stood crying my eyes out, tears streaming down my face and into the packet of crisps she had snatched off the supermarket shelf and thrust into my tiny 6-year-old hands, I wept sobbing as we walked around the Asda Walmart supermarket over in Wednesbury. Why was I crying, you may be wondering? Well, I had asked for some crisps, potato chips, and amazingly my mum had just stolen a bag because I was begging for crisps as any 6-year-old child would. I'll ask again, why was I crying? I had the crisps and was bound to escape the aforementioned beating, just so long as I'd stop crying. Well, the problem was this. She had stolen them without paying for them and having any intention of doing so. This caused me as a massive this caused me as a 6-year-old supposedly learning the difference between right and wrong, a massive inner conflict. If I ate them, I was a thief, and if I didn't, I was the victim of a declared physical and emotional abuse. I went on to suffer all my life anyway. I walked around sobbing into the packet, making them all sloppy and gooey. As deep inside me, I knew that what she was forcing me to do was in fact illegal. I didn't have a concept of law, but knew even then that it was wrong to take things without paying. Anyway, we reached the checkout counter, and I hoped she would pay for the crisps, but she never did, and I dare not say anything. Dare not say a thing. So that was the day right and wrong became blurred to me. I got in the car feeling that I had done what I was told, and wallop, she turns around and smacks me really hard. I told you about embarrassing me. Wallop, wallop, wallop. When I give you something, you fucking eat it, you little bastard. Do you understand? She said, giving me a final wallop. Eventually my stepfather, who I have and will always refer to as Time to give you a sneak peek of my other work that I'm working on. The book, ADHD ME, Pimp To Programmer. This is the first chapter. This is some of what I've done so far. Chapter 1. Fucking eat them, or I'll beat you when we get out of the store. My mother. Book. Hello everybody. Right. Time to give you a sneak peek of my...
He is the being, he